What is going on, Omnibus collectors? It is Riley and I'm back with another haul video. In this video, I'm going to be going over the stuff that I received through the most of the month of May. So that was purchases that took a while to come in from April, and then just a bunch of the things that I grabbed throughout May. There's a few new items, and that's what I'm going to talk about first, and then a lot of older things that I picked up. And then just to make a note, if there's any noise in the background, I apologize. My dogs are downstairs by themselves. Usually they're quiet, but if there's a knock or something, they'll start barking and all that. So I just wanted to alert that before anything happened. So anyway, I'm going to talk about new releases first, and then, like I said, I'm going to jump through and go through everything else. I have a lot of things, so some of it I'm going to speed through, and some of it I'm going to talk a little bit about, because some of the stuff I have later videos that I'm actually going to talk more about. You're going to see me reaching a lot, so apologize for that in advance. But anyway, let's get started. So as far as new releases go, in May, in the latter part of May, we started getting back to some sort of a schedule from Diamond, with new releases being shipped out to stores and stuff. And so there's a couple of Omnis that came out that I picked up, and a couple of paperbacks and stuff like that that I also picked up. But everything's kind of been shifted due to all the things around the world, and Diamond halting production for a while. A lot of releases have been shifted. So a lot of the things that were supposed to come out throughout March, April, May are now being shifted throughout the summer and fall months, and we're not having nearly as many releases. But anyway, these are the few things that I picked up that were newer releases last month. So we've got the 4th volume of Batman the Caped Crusader. This is basically, if you're not aware of what these paperbacks collect, these Caped Crusader collect issues of Batman, and then there's also the Dark Knight Detective volumes, and they collect issues of Detective Comics between basically after Crisis on Infinite Earths leading up to seemingly Nightfall. So it looks like they're trying to fill that gap. So it's like year 1 all the way to Nightfall. Now this one collects issues of Batman 455 to 465, and there's about 20 issues left between this and the beginning of the Nightfall crossovers in the first Nightfall omnibus. So it would be easy to say there's probably going to be 2 more of these paperbacks, so a total of 6. I don't recall if they've solicited a 5th one just yet, but 4 just recently came out. Also, as far as paperbacks go, I got a reprint of a Godzilla book, the first complete collection for Rulers of Earth. This collects the first, I think, 12 issues or 13 issues of this ongoing series, written by Chris Mowry with art by Matt Frank and Jeff Zorno. So this is one of IDW's ongoing Godzilla titles that they had published in the past several years. If you watched recently, I had a video where I talked about my Godzilla Blu-ray collection and the custom cases that I have, and showed some of my Kaiju movies off and stuff like that. And I'm trying to fill out my Godzilla paperback collection as well, and so I've been picking up some of the old Godzilla comics. And this one was not re-released, but I figured I'd show it now. I also got a copy of the second complete collection of Rulers of Earth. So that's going to be fun. I haven't read this Godzilla comic. I've read a good amount of Godzilla comics, but I haven't read this one, so I'm excited to check it out and see how it is. All right, and then more new releases from Image. I've got 2 big ones that came out recently from Image. The first one is the complete collection of Postal. This collects the 25-issue series plus the one-shots for Laura, Mark, and the dossier. So this series, I've never read any of Postal. I don't think I've even read any of Hawkins's books, period. I don't think so. But the reason I picked this up, number one, I thought it was a really good price, especially after discount, for this oversized, really thick book from Image. But number 2, because my good friend Jess, who does the Omni Bros live show with me, and who is on his own channel, OmniDog's Vault, has spoken a ton about this series, and I almost picked up the paperbacks back when he first started talking about it, because it sounded really cool, really interesting. And I'm glad that I didn't, because not long after that, the hardcover went up on Kickstarter, and then they announced from the Kickstarter that they would also be having a wide release for the Image hardcover. So finally, after some delay due to, Diamond's shutdown briefly. This is finally out and available, and I went ahead and grabbed it, and I'm excited to get to reading this at some point in the hopefully near future. And the second book that I have from Image is the third and final of these library-sized hardcovers of Black Science, the series by Rick Remender and Matteo Scalera. And this collects issues 31 through 43. So this is the third act, basically, of this series. Fantastic work. If you're a fan of Remender and you haven't read Black Science, I highly recommend it. It's a great sci-fi type series. Definitely very Remender type of stuff. You know what I mean when I say that, if you are a Remender fan. And it has a lot of bonus content at the back, cover art and sketch work and stuff like that. These huge books are really awesome. I love that Remender gets all of his books in these size, because the artwork is always fun to see in these oversized hardcovers. And I'm looking forward to one day rereading this entire series now that all 3 hardcovers are out and available. All right, and then I've got 2 omnibus editions from DC. The first one is one that I've already mentioned that I had from my Swamp Thing video, and that is the Nancy Collins Swamp Thing Omnibus. This one is material that has never been collected anywhere before, so it was really exciting to see this get solicited and then finally get released. My fingers were crossed the entire time between solicitation and release, because I was worried that, given DC's predilection for canceling things, I was sure that they would cancel this one, but luckily that did not happen, and here we are with the Swamp Thing by Nancy Collins Omnibus. With this, we now have just a small 20 some odd issues of material that has never been collected of Swamp Thing before. I just finished reading those issues last week so that I could prepare to read the Nancy Collins Omnibus and experience this stuff for the first time. It's super exciting. Like I said, never read this. I love Swamp Thing. He's one of my favorite characters. If you enjoy Swamp Thing and you've never read, or you want to kind of know what to pick up, check out my Swamp Thing collecting guide video. It is a complete guide of pretty much every Swamp Thing release. There's just a couple things that I didn't have that I didn't show from my personal collection on there because I didn't have them. Anyway, really excited about this one. And then the last new release book that I have, also an omnibus from DC. This is the Hellblazer by Garth Ennis omnibus, this really glossy volume. This collects the entirety of Garth Ennis's run on Hellblazer, as well as the follow-up story arc he did a little bit down the line from his main run. And this is a thick book. I really love that they've filled the entire spine with the stylized Hellblazer logo on there. It's really cool looking. This collects issues 41 to 50, 52 to 83, and 129 to 133. The 129 to 133 is that later arc that I was talking about. He finishes his main run on Hellblazer and then comes back for a short story arc. You don't need to worry. I know a lot of people, when they saw the contents, they were like, oh, I hate it when they do this and they skip around and stuff like that. But you don't need to worry about every Hellblazer story, like by every creator, is pretty self-contained, so you can enjoy everything here by Garth Ennis without needing to worry about reading the Jamie Delano stuff that came before it or anything that came after. As long as you know the character of John Constantine, that's all you really need going in here, and you really don't even need that. It just provides a little bit of context. But this is a great collection, fantastic stuff, with tons of Steve Dillon artwork throughout. I'm gonna try and hold up a little bit because it's a large book. So yeah, just some Steve Dillon artwork in here. And this is one of their, this is an early collaboration of theirs, Preacher. So this kind of leads into their Preacher series, also by Vertigo, later on. So if you're a fan of Preacher, if you're a fan of Garth Ennis, this is something that you'll definitely want to grab. It's also collected, it's notable that it's also collected in all of those new Hellblazer paperback editions. I think all of those are still available You can still find them online. You don't have to worry about, oh, this one's out of print, this one's out of print. So if you don't want to fork over the cash for a huge omnibus like this, or you don't think that it's easy to read a large hardcover like this, you can always go for those paperback editions. Okay, now that is all for the new material that I grabbed throughout the month of May. So if you're not interested in anything old that I grabbed, you can peace out at this point. But if you want to see some of the older stuff that I picked up in this past month, I'll be going through that now. So let's see. I'm trying to think of where to start because I've got several stacks here. So let's start here. I decided that I wanted to pick up, I wanted to kind of fill in one of my modern Spider-Man gaps and buy some of the material that I've really been enjoying from modern Spider-Man stuff post-Slott. Nick Spencer's been writing the main Spider-Man series after Dan Slott, but I'm still kind of hoping that they're going to do some sort of oversized hardcover edition. So I haven't bought any of Spencer's stuff, and once he's done with his run, it's been a while, and they haven't done any sort of oversized edition or special version of his run, or at least complete collections, then I might go back and buy the paperbacks, which is kind of what I did here. I kind of waited a little bit until I could tell, okay, they're probably not going to do anything special. So anyway, enough talking. This is what I grabbed as far as Spider-Man goes. I grabbed the entirety of Chip Zdarsky's material on Spider-Man. This is actually the later stuff that he did. So let me grab the other things real quick and go through those. So Zdarsky's first material with Spider-Man was on Peter Parker, the Spectacular Spider-Man, which he started with issues 1 through 6, and then soon thereafter, it got renumbered to legacy numbering. Issues 297 to 300 are collected in this second volume. This third volume is issues 301 to 303. And then in the fourth and final of his run, we have 304 to 310. And I didn't notice this before, but I just realized that these two have the exact same image on the back, so that's fun. I got really confused for a second. I was like, oh no, did I get 2 copies of volume 3 and just not notice it until now? But anyway, then after writing this run, which was pretty fantastic, Chip as a creator, I've been following him pretty much since he started doing work in comics, and when he moved over to Marvel, I kept thinking, man, I would really love to see him do Spider-Man because I think he has a great voice for the character. If you know Chip, you know he's very funny and irreverent and stuff, and it seemed like that would translate well into a Spider-Man series, and it did. But it was funny because he didn't lean as hard into the comedic side of things as I was thinking he would, and it wound up being just a really solid Spider-Man story, and one that I would love to see collected in more of a premium format. But it's been a little while and it hasn't happened yet, and I'm thinking, you know, I might as well jump on these now before they get hard to find, because I would hate to miss the chance to have this great run on my shelves. And then after that, he did the 6-issue life story miniseries. This is kind of a alternate universe take on the character, where each of the 6 issues of this series go through a certain decade of Spider-Man. So we have one for the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, the aughts, and then the 2010s, ending off the series. And so we see Peter age in real time as the series goes forward. So in the first issue, he's a high schooler and he gets his powers and stuff. And then as it goes forward, we see him, you know, in his 20s, 30s, 40s, and so on. And it's just a really interesting kind of telling of Spider-Man from this perspective. It's also kind of funny because years ago, when I was trying to think about if I was to write a Spider-Man story, what would I want to do? This was an idea like similar to this is what I was wanting to do. And it's not exactly the same. Obviously, mine was a lot different than what he did here. And mine was not supposed to be a self-contained thing. It was actually, you know, we would see Peter go through his career and grow old and then eventually die. But it would be connected to the main, anyway, it doesn't really matter. It was just fun to see someone kind of do a similar idea as to something that I had, and seeing how Zdarsky did that story that I kind of thought about, you know, what that was kind of what I thought I would write, and seeing his version of it was really cool, and it was really, really awesome to see it put on paper. Anyway, I really loved it. This is one of the best miniseries, and maybe one of the best comics that came out in 2019. So if you're a Spider-Man fan, I highly recommend it. I also grabbed the last volume of Peter Parker Spectacular Spider-Man. This collects issues 311 through 313. This ties into the Spider-Geddon event, which I also grabbed, and I grabbed the Edge of Spider-Geddon trade paperback as well. This was kind of a follow-up to Spider-Verse. Of course, with the popularity of the movie, the Into the Spider-Verse movie, they decided to follow this up and do another storyline where a bunch of Spider-Men and Spider-Girls and Spider-Women from other dimensions came together to once again fight against the Inheritors. And it was a fun storyline. Dan Slott co-wrote with Christos Gage, who takes over as kind of the main architect of this event. And there was a lot of different tie-ins, but I only grabbed what I considered to be the main stuff. So I grabbed that 5th paperback from Peter Parker Spectacular Spider-Man just to kind of end that run, because it's only the one more volume. And then these two comprise basically the main material. The main reason I grabbed this one was because there's a one-shot for Superior Octopus, which kind of leads directly into issue 0 of Spider-Geddon. And then I also grabbed, because it kind of spins out of here, the 2 paperbacks of Christos Gage's Superior Spider-Man Volume 2. This is Full Auto and Automatic, collects the entire 12-issue run. Basically, we see Doc Ock's version of Spider-Man kind of taking on his own role, his own version of Spider-Man. He's no longer pretending to be Peter Parker. He's trying to create his own identity. And these are his stories of him going back to being Spider-Man, or a version of Spider-Man in, was it San Diego or San Francisco? I forget exactly which city he went to. But it was a fun series. I really enjoyed it. If you're a fan of Superior Spider-Man, this is a really nice follow-up to the original series that I don't think they're ever going to do any sort of larger hardcover collection for. And then finally, more Spider-Man stuff. I got the 2 volumes of the most recent volume of Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, written by Tom Taylor. Tom Taylor, of course, right now the biggest thing he's been doing is Deceased over at DC, which has been pretty fun. He did over at Marvel the all-new Wolverine series, and then a ton of other stuff at various publishers that's been very well received. And he did a pretty decent Spider-Man run. It was only it was only 14 issues long, so it was a little bit longer than Superior, but 14 issues long, collected across these 2 volumes, Secrets and Rumors and Hostile Takeovers. If you're a fan of Tom Taylor, I'd recommend picking these up. They're readily available, easy to grab. They're on in-stock trades. They're available elsewhere as well. Just a fun additional take on Spider-Man. I've always enjoyed, we'll have like the main Amazing Spider-Man series, and then you'll get something supplementary, such as the Chip Zdarsky series, and they kind of get to go off and do their own thing and use some of the side characters and secondary characters, which is kind of the whole point of the original Spectacular Spider-Man series in the first place, was they went off and did a story using the tertiary supporting cast characters. Anyway, so that's all the Spider-Man stuff that I grabbed, and I have a video that I'm going to be doing that's specifically Spider-Man related, which is kind of why I wanted to grab those now. So moving on, this next stack I have some, this is all kind of Iron Man related stuff. So in my last haul video, I had brought in a couple of epic collections that I had missed out on before. So I grabbed those. I think it was The Enemy Within and Duel of Iron. And then I also grabbed the War Machine Classic volume. And so to follow up on these things, I grabbed a few more books. I got the Doom epic collection. So this was the last epic that I needed. And this is, I think there's one more volume, or this might be the last volume of the Michelinie-Leighton run. I have no idea how I missed this. When it came out, I was planning on buying anything that collects part of the second Leighton-Michelinie run on Iron Man, but for some reason I never grabbed it, and it went out of print, and I had to hope that I could find it online for cover price, and I was lucky enough that I found it for a few bucks lower. And then I'll have in a future video the upcoming War Machine epic collection, which I think follows that one. And then following the War Machine Epic and the first War Machine Classic trade paperback is this crossover, The Hands of the Mandarin. This features issues 8 through 10 of War Machine. This follows directly after that War Machine Classic volume I've been talking about, as well as issues 310 to 312 of Iron Man, and Force Works issues 6 and 7, as well as material from Marvel Comics Presents 169 to 172. So this is the next chunk of issues for War Machine, and collects a few issues of Iron Man that have not been collected in the Epic collections or anything like that, at least not yet. So I grabbed that pretty cheap. You can find it actually for a really fair price if you go online on like eBay and stuff like that. And then speaking of Force Works, which was involved in that one, I also grabbed the Force Works complete collection series. This has every issue of Force Works before the issues that tied into something that I'm about to show in a couple minutes here. So this has issues 1 through 15 plus the Ashcan edition, Century, Distant Suns, and material from Iron Man Force Works Collector's Preview. This is Dan Abnett and Andy Lanning, who are known for reinventing the Guardians of the Galaxy into the version that we know from the movies and stuff. He also took on the West Coast Avengers and kind of made them into this new version of the Avengers Force Works in the 90s, and it was a Iron Man led team. So this gets involved in a lot of Iron Man related crossovers and stuff like that. I haven't read this yet at all. I've never read any of Force Works, but because of one of the books that I'm going to show in a minute, I decided, you know what, I'm going to grab the first volume, or the volume of this collecting everything else, so I can have more context going into that crossover. And then more Iron Man related stuff. We've got Avengers Iron Man First Sign. This collects issue 449 of Captain America, 496 of Thor, 326 to 331 of Iron Man, and Avengers 396 to 400. So it was a crossover primarily between Avengers and Iron Man, but also starring Cap and Thor during this time. Also got this just as basically filling in the gaps between all these books that I've been buying. Because, and this is the one that a lot of people are going to cringe at, but I did pick up a copy of Avengers The Crossing. Now, this is infamous for being one of the most critically loathed and loathed by fans as well crossovers of the 90s as far as Marvel goes. And I bought this knowing that full and well, but it's that really bad habit of mine that I just want to fill gaps in my collection and stuff. And I was like, man, this has issues like this. It has issues of Iron Man, it has issues of Force Works, and it has issues of War Machine. So it takes off a lot of boxes on my checklists, as far as like, because I keep checklists on my phone of like, all right, I don't have these issues, these are not collected, you know, this is available in this. And I started noticing also that this volume was getting a bit harder to find for a good price, and it was starting to go for over cover price, which is ridiculous to me because for years I had the chance to get this for like a third of cover price, and I floundered that chance and now had to pay about half cover price. So I was still lucky to find it for a really good price, but not quite as good as it could have been. So that said, I know, like I said, people really don't like this crossover. They really don't like this event, but my good friend Omar over at Near Mint Condition, who also works with me on the Omnibros live show, had made a video about it, and I watched it, and he kind of defended it and talked about what he actually liked about this event. And I was like, you know what? I think it's going to be pretty fair for me to give it my own chance at the very least. So yeah, there we go. I got The Crossing. Major sin in my book right there. One day I'll probably not be so obsessed with completing sets like that, but until then, I have The Crossing in my collection. And speaking of things that I don't know, I probably I skipped on this one before for a reason, and once again it was kind of like, this fills holes in my collection, but it also is something that I was really interested in reading, because I never read this back when it came out, and I haven't read it in paperbacks or anything, but I'm kind of interested in reading this from like a historic standpoint, and that is the Heroes Reborn omnibus. Now, Heroes Reborn is the storyline that follows Onslaught directly. And of course, I have Onslaught on my X-Men shelf, as that is a major event dealing with the X-Men. But when this came out, I was like, I'm going to pass on it. I don't want this. But my buddy Gabe, who works on the Omnibros live show with me as well, was a big proponent for this one. He talked about it a lot. And I looked into it, and it does look, aside from a couple things that are a little questionable to me, such as Rob Liefeld's Captain America, there's a lot of cool stuff in here that I was kind of interested in seeing and reading, and just kind of having this piece of Marvel's history, for better or worse, on my shelves. So this collects issues, Heroes Reborn 1/2, Captain America 1 through 12, Avengers 1 through 12, Fantastic Four 1 through 12, and Iron Man 1 through 12, material from Incredible Hulk 450. So we have a ton of different creators on this: Rob Liefeld, Jim Lee, Jeff Loeb, Jim Valentino, Scott Lobdell, Chuck Dixon, James Robinson, Walter Simonson, Brandon Choi, Peter David, Joe Phillips, Joe Bennett, Al Rio, Ed Benes, Chap Yap, Ian Churchill, Michael Ryan, Anthony Wynn, Brett Booth, Ron Lim, Ryan Benjamin, Wills Portacio, Terry Schumacher, Mike Miller, and Mike Deodato Jr. all credited for this book. So a real mess of just a lot of big names, a lot of them who are still big names in comics now. So yeah, and then of course right after I bought this, I saw the solicit that they were actually going to release a return omnibus, so the direct follow-up to that, and I was like, okay, well, cool, now I guess I have to buy that. That one I'm actually a little more tempted towards, because it has a bunch of issues of, just kind of a PSA, a bunch of issues of the Thunderbolts that have never been collected before in the return omnibus. So that is really cool. All right, moving forward, I've got a couple of X-Men related books. I was able to find both of the classic Gambit books, Gambit Classic Volumes 1 and 2, for under cover price each, which is really nice because as long as I've been, I don't want to say as long as I've been collecting, but as long as I've been wanting to grab these and keeping my eye on them, they've always been pretty far above cover price, like, at least 50% above cover price. And I found them both for like half off of the cover price, which is really awesome. So anyway, this first classic collection collects his first appearances in Uncanny X-Men 265 to 267, as well as his first 4-issue miniseries. The second collection collects the second miniseries, as well as the 1995 Rogue miniseries. Also, both of those are 4 issues long. So some cool material, and I have literally every other Gambit collection, so eventually I was going to have to grab these. So I'm really happy to have finally been able to get those and add them to my collection. The next few volumes here are all Daredevil related. So I've been picking up the Ann Nesenti Epic collections, but I'd been kind of ignoring all of the other Epic collections, and then I don't know, something triggered in me, and I was like, you know what, I'd really like to get those, because I've never read the material from, that era, and I really love Daredevil as a character, and it's like, I have so much stuff collected. It was another kind of, all right, I just want to fill that gap, but I'm excited to check this stuff out, and I know that some of it is not exactly loved by fans or anything, but I don't know, I'm excited. So let's see, I got volume 18 of the Epic Collections, Fall from Grace, and that follows up directly with volume 19, The Root of Evil. And then volume 20, this is Purgatory and Paradise. And then what I believe is going to be the last, it has to be the last of the Epic Collections, volume 21, Widow's Kiss. So this Widow's Kiss has Joe Kelly's run and Scott Lobdell in there, J.M. DeMatteis and Carl Kessel in this one. And then these two have DG, I don't know exactly how to pronounce the name, Chichester or Chichester, doing material on there. So there's still some stuff before Fall from Grace, before volume 18, that needs to be collected. There's a decent chunk between, I think they have volume 15 coming out soon, which is, I believe, the end of Ann Nesenti's run. I think off the top of my head, I might be wrong. So they still need to put out volume 16 and 17 to kind of bridge that gap, and then these bring it all the way to the end of that series. And then of course it reboots with Marvel Knights, and we have literally everything from that point collected, and most of it collected in nice big omnibus collections. Okay, the next few are Ghost Rider books. These are some books that like Gambit, I've been after for a while, and I was finally able to find them for a really nice price, or price that worked for me, and that is the Road to Damnation and the Trail of Tears. Both of these are Garth Ennis with Clayton Crane doing Ghost Rider, so I'm really excited for that. I've never read that material, but I am a big Ennis fan, so hopefully I am not disappointed there. And then by Simon Spurrier, I grabbed the Danny Ketch Addict paperback, and this takes place, I believe, sometime during Jason Aaron's run on Ghost Rider, but it's not collected in the Jason Aaron omnibus, so I was finally able to track that one down for, I think, about 10 bucks, which was really nice. So that fills out a little more of my Ghost Rider collection. Of course, I wish that they would do the 90s Danny Ketch series, going further than just the 2 classic editions that they put out years ago that are out of print. But this will wet that whistle and, you know, whet the appetite that I have to read some more Ghost Rider, at least until that happens or doesn't happen. I don't know. And then the last part of my haul is all Punisher related. And I have a video that I'm going to be putting up pretty soon. Sorry, I'm kind of reaching for stuff, where I'm going to talk about these books a little bit more at length. So check out for that. I've already filmed it, but I don't think I'm very satisfied with it, so I'm going to go and refilm the that video for the Punisher and then publish that, and hopefully it turns out good, because it's something I put a lot of work into. So I grabbed a bunch of Punisher books, so I'm going to go through these really quickly. So here's some classic stuff I grabbed. I got the Epic Collections. This is volume 3, Kingpin Rules, and volume 5, Jigsaw Puzzle. So we already have volume 2 is Circle of Blood, so volume 4 is not available just yet. And then they don't have 6 out, but they do have volume 7, Capital Punishment. So they're putting out a decent number of those Punisher Epic Collections. And then next, chronologically, I got the Suicide Run. This is a crossover between the main Punisher series, Punisher War Journal, and Punisher War Zone. So all 3 of them have issues in here. This one has 85 to 88 of Punisher, 61 to 64 of War Journal, and 23 to 25 of War Zone. And then next, Punisher Invades the Nam. The Nam has never been collected in its entirety, so this is some material that was not collected before. I really wish they would go back and start collecting, maybe doing epic collections or just nice thick trade paperbacks like this, to collect the rest of the series. But this has the Nam issues 52 to 53 and 67 to 69, as well as Punisher Invades the Nam Final Invasion, Punisher War Journal 52 to 53, and Punisher War Zone 26 to 30. So a lot of cool material in here. And then got Punisher River of Blood. This has 31 to 36 of the Warzone series. And then moving forward, I'm going through these chronologically. Going to the Marvel Knight stuff, we have Purgatory. This is the 4-issue miniseries, as well as the 4-issue Punisher Wolverine Revelation miniseries. And then Taxi Wars. This collects all the material that was not written by Ennis during the ongoing Marvel Knights Punisher run, so that's issues 8 through 12, as well as a couple different one-shots and stuff. And then next from Marvel Knights, Punisher Bullseye. This is Dan Way with Steve Dillon, 5-issue miniseries. And then Garth Ennis came back to do one more Marvel Knights miniseries in 2009, The Resurrection of Monucci. This is Warzone, I think, volume 2, issues 1 through 6. And then the first War Journal complete collection by Matt Fraction. The second has not been put out yet, but this collects the first 12 issues of, I think it was a 25-issue run, so the second one should complete that. Hopefully we do wind up seeing that come out at some point. This was a pretty fun Punisher run, preceding Rick Remender's. And then I got the Punisher Bullseye Deadliest Hits. This collects the 2-issue Trial of Punisher miniseries as well as the 2-issue Bullseye Perfect Game miniseries. Mostly I grabbed this for the Trial of Punisher, which was a miniseries that came out between the Greg Rucka run on Punisher and the next run here. Nathan Edmondson's run, that's volume 1, black and white. This one's actually become really hard to find. Volume 2, Border Crossing, and volume 3, Last Days. So this goes right up until the Secret Wars miniseries. So that's a 20-issue run by Nathan Edmondson. After Secret Wars, we come back to have Becky Cloonan take over on the next run. This is the first out of 3 volumes on the road. Second out of her 3 volumes is End of the Line. And then her final volume is this one, King of the New York Streets. And that was a 17-issue series that Becky Cloonan did and features the last published artwork by Steve Dillon. So that is notable for that. And then the most recent run on Punisher is the Matt Rosenberg stuff. He did 2 separate series. So this is the first half of the first series he did, the War Machine run. And that is followed by this volume. This is the second half of the War Machine run. Basically, Frank takes the War Machine armor and starts using it for himself. And then we have his second run. He starts with a new issue, number 1. Frank no longer has the armor. This is World War Frank. Volume 2 of that one is War in Bagalia. And then the last volume, Street by Street, Block by Block. And this goes through the end of the 16-issue second run by Rosenberg. And then I've got just a few more shorter volumes here for the smaller volumes for the Punisher. Punisher Max Untold Tales. This was a mini-series published after Jason Aaron's Punisher Max series, just a bunch of single issues by different creators set in the Max universe. Punisher Max The Platoon. This is a more recent mini-series by Garth Ennis, coming back to the character. There's also another mini-series called Punisher Soviet that has followed this volume. That one has not been collected just yet. And then I got a random Punisher miniseries that doesn't tie into anything, Space Punisher by Frank Thierry with Mark Texeira. So this one's not in continuity or anything, but I was just like, oh, well, it's super cheap. And I remember when this was published, it looked ridiculous. So I might as well pick it up and add it to the collection. So like I said, I'll be talking about Punisher stuff in another video and give a little bit more depth and more thoughts on those books in that later video. And then now this last chunk of books, the first several are DC books, and then the last one is something different. So first I got Suicide Squad Volume 8. Somehow, just like that Iron Man Epic Collection from earlier, I missed when this came out, and I had been sitting there foolishly saying to myself over and over, like, man, I wish DC would just release that last volume of Suicide Squad by Ostrander. And then one day when I had released my my library tour video, someone commented on the video, because in the video I even mentioned it, like, just waiting on that 8th volume, and someone was like, actually, that's already been out for a little while. It's called The Final Mission. So I finally went and bought that volume. And then randomly remembered that I only ever had this run in single issues. I bought the Emerald Eclipse volume of Green Lantern Corps. This is the prelude to the Blackest Night storyline in Peter Tomasi and Patrick Gleason's Green Lantern Corps book. This is a fantastic story arc. But yeah, like I said, I only ever had this material in single issues. When I sold all of my single issues, I bought a lot of them in trade paperbacks and hardcovers and stuff, but that one I kind of completely forgot about, and so I went and filled that gap. And then this is one that I sold the paperback to a while ago, intending on upgrading, but never got around to it, and that is Identity Crisis. Now, this one is not the greatest book in the world, and a lot of people actively loathe it for what it did to certain characters. But I'll admit that there are some parts in this book that I really liked, and I do really like Rags Morales' artwork, and I found it for a really, really nice price, so I decided that I would go ahead and add it to my collection, kind of to fill out my DC Events / Crisis collection. All right, now this next one is a rather big one. This one I skipped out on when it came out last year, I think it was, or early this year, because the main material is collected in another omnibus, but I was able to get it for a good price right before it started going out of print or getting harder to find, and that is the Blackest Night omnibus. So this one is a thick guy. But I picked this up because mostly the main material is collected in the Jeff Johns Green Lantern Omnis, and I've had those since they came out, but that only collects the main Blackest Night miniseries as well as the issues of Green Lantern. So it doesn't collect any of the tie-ins, it doesn't collect Green Lantern Corps or anything like that, and that stuff is collected in here, so I decided to go ahead and pick it up for all that other stuff. When when Blackest Night was happening in single issues, I was buying a lot of those tie-ins, so a lot of that stuff I sold back when I got rid of all my single issues, and I always wanted to go back and get the collections of that, and I waited and waited and waited, and so eventually they released this, and then I skipped out on it because I didn't have the cash at the time to afford it, because it is an expensive book with a $150 cover price. But I was able to find it recently, and I had some Amazon cash, basically, and decided to pick it up, and now I can revisit all of those miniseries that I had read back when this was coming out in singles, and also some stuff that I hadn't read. But the only thing that I did notice when I was looking through the contents on the back of this and in the inside is it's actually not complete. So there's a few different, it's mostly just tie-ins from different series like Doom Patrol, and I think there's an issue of, I think there was Secret Six might have tied in briefly, and there was a Suicide Squad issue, stuff like that, that didn't get collected in here. So there is material that is not collected in this omnibus, believe it or not, with how big this thing is. I think it's like 1,600 pages. There's still material that's not in there. And the last book from my haul today, another big one, not quite as heavy as that one though, is the first Kaiju Max hardcover. So this collects the first 2 Kaiju Max series by Xander Cannon in this nice, huge Oni Press hardcover. I've only read the first series, and I absolutely loved it, and I wanted to pick this up back when it first came out, but couldn't afford it at the time. So just like with Blackest Night, I found it for a good price and jumped on it. So I'm really excited about that, because that first miniseries was really great, and I've been looking forward to picking this up and reading it. And they've already solicited a second hardcover that collects volumes 3 and 4. So I'm really looking forward to that. If you're not familiar, Kaiju Max is basically a story about a prison island where people hold kaiju. It's a maximum security prison, so that gives its name, Kaiju Max. It's very cool, especially if you're a fan of old kaiju movies, Godzilla movies and stuff. There's a lot of nice references to stuff like that. And one of the big reasons I wanted to pick this up was because my buddy Omar had mentioned that it features a lot of notes at the bottom of the pages and gives you a lot of extra context for what these characters, where they came from, what they might be based off of, and stuff like that. And as well, it has a lot of really cool additional material at the back. There's cover art in the back, and there's some profiles as well, is what I was looking for. Overall, just giving us a really slick, big old hardcover collection for this really nice series, and I'm gonna have this sitting next to all of my kaiju movies and different material. So that is everything. That is my haul for all the stuff that I grabbed in May. I guarantee that my June haul is not going to be anywhere near as large as this. I do have a lot of stuff that's coming in right now that's trickling in from May, so I'll try and not do everything in one giant video like I did this time, because it's kind of a pain to gather all this stuff that I already put on the shelves. But anyway, thank you so much if you watched this entire video. Thanks for watching all the way end. Sorry that I collect some really crappy stuff like Avengers: The Crossing, but it's in my nature as a collector sometimes to do that. But I promise that I don't collect it for no reason. I will read all of the books that I get. I don't get them just to put on the shelf. It might take years to get to them, but I will do it. So if there's anything that I talked about here that you want to hear more about, if you want me to review, overview, anything like that, let me know in the comments down below, and I'd be happy to try and do that for you. As well, if you haven't subscribed yet to my channel and you like what you see here, please consider subscribing and pressing the bell so you'll get notified every time I release new videos. I should have a couple of new things like I was talking about. I've got the a Spider-Man video and a Punisher video coming up that I've been working really hard on as far as gathering information and scripting, I guess. I don't really run off of a script, but I get all of my information together before I do the video so that I can kind of streamline and talk more naturally about stuff. And my dog is really interested in seeing what I'm doing right now, so he's up here with me right now. So yeah, that is all. Thank you so much again for watching. I hope everyone's staying happy and healthy and safe out there. And until next time, take it easy and we'll see you soon.